Hello, and this is going to be a video of thoughts upon my ongoing game of Pearl Harbor in the Empires of Apocalypse series. I'm on the August month of 1940, so I've been playing since January 1939. A turn is a month, so that's 20 turns that I've done. And I previously posted some videos of the early portions of this game, but really only as fillers while I was preparing my second instructional video, because the videos of this game that I posted was some weeks ago, and I was still very rusty with the rules, and so there's a lot of inaccuracies in my description of rules and what's going on. So take those purely for like entertainment, or like a broad rough sketch of what this game particularly is about. But now I'm not so much talking about rules or so forth, or actually what's going on, but just I need to collect my thoughts on the grand picture of this game, and especially as a solo player I find it's very easy to lose the big picture, because as a player you have a lot of procedures which you have to perform, moving counters and so forth, and hang on a minute. Okay, I thought it might be a little bit more interesting for you to have a picture of a talking head for a minute instead of just like a static board. But yeah, what I was saying is that as a solo player, because you're involved in so many of the procedures of the game, like moving the counters, deciding where to attack, how to resolving retreats, checking lines of supply for individual units and so forth, and you're doing that for both sides, so you're involved in a lot of procedural operations and kind of details of the game. It's quite easy as a solo player to lose the big picture, especially because you're looking at two big pictures, like essentially kind of like an attacker or a defender at any one point. So I thought I would record a video as a means to help collect my thoughts on the game so far, because I decided to play this game because I want to get into the Pacific Theatre of Operations, so essentially to test out the naval rules in combination with the land rules in this series. I have not really used the naval rules before, because I played Barbarossa scenarios and essentially just Eastern Front scenarios in the Western Theatre of Operations. So I'm playing this as an experiment, and but I decided to start in 1939 with the Japanese limited war on China, because that I thought would give me a chance to get up to speed with the rules before I enter into attack on Pearl Harbor, and well, even prior to that, the Japanese need to take some of the Indonesians, the East Indies, the Indonesian, the Dutch held areas. So many months the Japanese will not attack anyway, so they will be hoarding their political points that way. And other times they will save their political points, make a significant lunge, and gain, hopefully to gain some political points back, if not as many as they have spent in that operation. On the other side, the Chinese gain the same amount of political points each month, and they also gain some, like if they cause a retreat to the Japanese, but they haven't been launching attacks, because attacks are very costly in this game. It's not like a odds based, so you might destroy the defender and your units completely unscathed. If you look at the land combat chart, it's on a differential basis, and if you look at this, say even if the differential is even, the first result is the attacker loss, and the second result is the defender loss. So the attacker's going to take a lot of losses. Okay, that's when it's even. Say if you have +3, which is a significant kind of bonus, the attacker could still take 2 points of losses to the defender's 2 points. 1 point here, 1 point here. So you see, half the time they're still taking losses. So even though you may win the battle, there's kind of like an attritional effect upon your forces. So the Chinese are kind of quite happy to force the Japanese to spend political points for combats and then cause them to spend lots of resource points to replace their attritional losses in the combats. And that's kind of how it's been going. But yes, so I'm at a point now where Japan essentially, it has been concentrating on the so-called limited war here. They have not declared war on China, partly because that would speed up the US political process and enable them to gear up their productive capacity. But also because it essentially hasn't needed to, because what with the weather, there's only so many attacks you can make, and what with each attack needing supply previously, there was only so much supply the Japanese could commit. But now the Japanese essentially have gained all of this area and all of this area from China, and with that they've gained all these cubes. That's what's that cube? So that should be that's a Japanese held. These are all resource points. So they've taken a lot of resource points off China. China's now essentially on the ropes, and the means that Japan did that was by committing the gap between the communist and the nationalist Chinese, because the Chinese are greatly hampered by this. The point that you have essentially the communist units are in the north. You can see they're retreating out. Well, they've got their last cities back here. They've given up the cities they held here, and if this city goes, the communists are out of the game. So, but you can see that's going to be a hard task. Sorry, this city here, Urumqi, if that goes, the communists are out of the game. But to get that way with in supply will take a heck of a long time for the Japanese. Now there's a city here and a city left here. If those two are taken, then the nationalists are out of the game. And in between the two, there's a gap, because the nationalists and the communists cannot be adjacent to each other, or else there's a 50% chance they're going to fight each other. Now, because these are the political points gathered, and you have the communists and the nationalists here and the Japanese here, because the Chinese are not fighting, they amass lots of political points, but then they can spend 10 of them to activate cities that become replacement cities, so then they gain more replacement points, more reinforcements. So they've mainly been spending their political points on that. But there is one option they have, is to completely cancel any gain of political points, and then they're allowed to place their units next to each other. So then you would have a continuous line of defence, which is difficult to penetrate in these mountainous regions. The Chinese have not done that in this game, and it's maybe too late to do that now. I mean, I guess maybe I should do it now, but I'm thinking that if I was the Chinese, again in another game, I would definitely consider forsaking the chance. What it essentially means, you would not be able to make attack ever again. You'd only be able to defend until or if the Japanese ever declare war on you, when the political point system is disregarded. But if the Chinese forsake any political points, they can close the gap and create a continuous line of defence, which they have not been able to do so far. And you can see the greatest penetration was in that gap. Here's the nationalist forces, here's the communist. The communist forces were kind of here, but the Chinese penetrated the gap and then moved north, gobbling up the communist forces who've had to retreat. You've got Mao here, and he's had to surrender that unit. He's going to be cut off. They cannot move their boats. These are river transports because the river ends there. So he's lost these units, and they're going to set up perhaps an engineer here building a fort here, but then of course they could be flanked in these clear hexes. They might have to, I don't know what we're going to do, but we'll think about that later. But you can see, so the communists are in retreat. They probably will be able to survive the whole war sitting out in Urumqi. But then the question is, will they be able to strike back at the Japanese? The Japanese will have to leave garrisons here. But on the other hand, the nationalists are still in the game. So the Japanese have got to take these two cities. They've now got, France has fallen, and so this French Indochina is now Vichy occupied. So the Japanese can move around here, which previously they couldn't. So they've got sort of some flanking to do, but you can see their line is stretched. They have units back here, which are mostly very weak units, but some a bit stronger. They have to hunt partisans because this area is littered with partisans that cause hits to their resources and things like that. So the Japanese are very well stretched, and it's reached the point in time is that they have to say, right, and we have to start winding down operations in China, maybe just a few more. I mean, we're in August at the moment, so the combat season, campaign season is going to end here soon. We may only have this campaign season, and then we have to start concentrating our resources on sea invasions. So it's a big sort of decision point, because otherwise then Japan say, well, no, we'll wait for another campaign season of clear weather to come round, and we'll try and take the nationalists out. Or they have to do some kind of, they have to, essentially I think they have to take one of these cities this year, and then they could save some resources to take the other city this year, take the nationalists out of the game, not worry about the communists too much. But if the nationalists are still in the game, you can see that the Japanese are going to have to leave so many troops to garrison the front line in China that they won't have enough troops and resources so forth to take these islands down here. So we've reached kind of like a critical point in the battle for China. Maybe, yeah, it's just interesting because the Japanese could, if they had more political points, they have had enough supply. They could have performed many more attacks than they have been able to because of the political situation. But they, so maybe another game I had to consider declaring war on China if I'm then going to do lightning strikes down here and against Pearl Harbor before the Americans can gear up anyway. I don't know. So it's just good. It's just, I suppose that's just a picture for you of, you know, these kind of decisions which you make in any decent Pacific theatre of operations game. And they're all here at 2. Because of course the other thing is research. You've got the research charts, so the Japanese have to spend resources on researching, improving. They're going for improving their submarines, improving their aircraft, and that's about it. They're concentrating on those two. Because you cannot sort of improve, you don't get research in naval. Just a little note of a few points that I thought of. I mean, in retrospect, China can gain lend-lease from America, but China has a single port here when the game starts. If that port goes, then they can only gain, nationalist China can only gain lend-lease from America via the Burma Road. But Japan can close the Burma Road purely by declaring it closed. So essentially that, if Japan captures this port, which they should, then America would essentially supply once to nationalist China, and then Japan would declare that closed. And that's it, no more lend-lease from America. On the other hand, the communist China can get lend-lease from USSR. That should happen immediately. I forgot that rule, and so the USSR was kind of building units just to spend its resource points and etc. when it should have been providing communist China support. So anyway, it can do that now. The other points, I suppose, are, yeah, I mean, it's just sort of obvious points in retrospect, is that Japan has to be careful garrisoning these areas. Partisans cannot operate in a unit zone of control. So good point to do is to spend for these very cheap 1 point defense, kind of home defense user, export them abroad and use them as garrisons in China. Another point that I would advise both sides to take is build engineers, many engineers, as quickly as possible, because you need engineers to build up fortifications, to lay railways. You'll need more engineers than you probably think. Like China has something like 5 between them. That's maybe enough. Maybe they need a couple more, because 2 engineers can build a fortress in 3 months instead of 1 engineer building it in 6 months. And China will get enough material points that it won't be able to spend unless it starts peppering the country with fortresses, which it should have done before. Forts are okay, but that's only +1 on defence. A fortress is, I can't remember, I don't think I've attacked a fortress yet, but they're significantly stronger. And likewise, Japan should build lots of engineers to build their railways out quickly, or otherwise they are going to suffer from being able to supply their units. And they also need engineers to go around and repair hits taken by partisan units. Plus, they should definitely leave 2 or 3 at least units behind the front line, purely to combat the partisans and keep them down, or else they are going to proliferate at an incredible rate. So I think that's all that I could say on this now. I'll just sort of finish this video here and load it up in case it's of any interest. Okay, over and out.